It's almost been 6 years since Panasonic announced the Lumix G9, which was a camera aimed at still photography shooters like wildlife, portrait, landscape, and street photographers. Today, they just announced its successor, the Lumix G9 II. In this video, we're gonna go over the specs, the features, the price point. Let's get into it. The Lumix G9 II is Panasonic's high-end model aimed at still shooters, and it's the first ever Micro Four Thirds camera to include phase detection autofocus. Even though this may have photographers in mind, the Lumix G9 II has some great video features that I'll be getting into in just a minute. The most obvious difference from the first G9 is that the G9 II is based on the chassis of the full-frame Lumix S5 II, allowing for space for controls, cables, and ports. Now let's go over the key specs of this camera. Alright, so here we go. We are at dpreview.com, and this was just published earlier today, I think even before I woke up. So let's get right to the specs of the Lumix G9 II. So let's take a look at the photos first. As you can tell right here, it has the same body structure as the Lumix S5 II as reported. So I would assume same ports, same cables can be used with this camera. Let's go back over here if I can find an easier way to look through these photos. There we go. Cool, so there we go. So same form factor of the S5 II and the S5, which I've grown to enjoy. It is not a heavy camera body at all, and it fits nicely into the hand. So you can see here, it has a nice red record button for when you want to shoot some video. Dials are a bit different. It doesn't have a top LCD screen, I don't think. Let me see here. What battery is that? That's the same battery as the S5 II and GH6. So if you have that, feel free to keep on using it, which I really enjoy. And I'm able to power the camera via USB-C and recharge that battery. So dual card slot, as you can tell right here. But the body itself is very similar to the S5 II. So if you have used those cameras, this is going to be very easy for you to use. Okay. Oh, let's go right here. So you can see the mic input as well as the headphone jack, full HDMI and USB-C port right here for charging and transferring data. Okay. So there's your flip out screen. There's the back. It looks exactly like the S5 II. Okay. So here's the side-by-side with the G9 II and the original G9 right here. So you can see it's basically the same exact size, quite honestly. Two function buttons by the grip, like the original G9. Everything else is pretty much same placement, where you would go to unlock the lens right here, that button. Same placement as well. So same red ring by the shooting mode dial. Same everything, except that it says G9 II in the front, and it's in an S5 II body. Right, this is side by side with the OM1, Olympus OM1. So just a slightly taller, slightly bigger camera, but the grip comes up a little bit higher. So it's roughly about the same, slightly larger. That's about it. Okay, so there's a top right there. Okay, so same dial as the S5 II as well. Everywhere with the white balance, ISO, and exposure control are all in the same spot. And there's a sensor, just a smaller sensor since it's Micro Four Thirds in comparison to the full frame Lumix S5 II. Here you go, because we all know all Lumix cameras are going to be pretty great at recording video, so that's what it kind of looks like with a boom mic onto a little shotgun mic. And there is the classic 12 to 60 millimeter lens attached to the G9 Mark II, which I would assume will be the kit lens that will go with this camera if you bought it with the kit. But it is available for body only. For those who already have Micro Four Thirds lenses, you're going to be good to go. All right, so let's get out of this. Cool. Now let's get to the specs, okay? So here are the key specs that we have. It's telling us right here, we got the 25 megapixel CMOS sensor, which is going to be great. Dual output gain, which I'm going to really enjoy. I was really impressed with the Lumix GH6 and how that camera performed with taking portraits, even though primarily I use it for video, but knowing that it can perform really well and give me 25 megapixel images to work with makes it great for doing behind the scenes, still images for social media and so forth and so on. It has a 5-axis image body stabilization, which we already knew, but this time it's rated for 8 stops of image stabilization, which is going to be fantastic for times I don't want to bring a monopod or a gimbal, okay, to capture some video or some photography. Has on sensor phase, so we have your auto phase detect right here and 779 points. Okay, so that's going to be plenty of coverage and hopefully be super accurate for our photos and video. In the back, we have a 3-inch, 1.84 million dot fully articulating touch screen. So that's going to give us, well, I've never complained about the touch screens that Panasonic has delivered. They've always been extremely responsive and always been fully touchscreen. So kudos to that. Here we go. We have the 3.86 million dot OLED electronic viewfinder, which is what I believe the original one had as well. And a lot of people really enjoyed that one. So we're going to expect the same kind of experience coming out of this viewfinder of the G9 Mark II. It does 60 frames burst shooting with autofocus continuous and electronic shutter at 10 frames mechanical. So even at, as many of you know, I shoot with different cameras. I rarely have it set to shoot more than 10 frames a second for my portrait photography. But again, this is aimed at all still photographers. So if you're a wildlife photographer, that 60 frames a second is going to be awesome for you. And I believe from a video I watched with Tony and Chelsea Northrup, that is going to be, or was it Jordan and Chris? But either way, 60 frames a second, your phase detect is still in action. Okay, I'll double check that. But regardless, 60 frames a second is going to give you plenty to work with when capturing a bird taking flight, a bee at a flower, or something timeless like that, or the first kiss at the wedding, stuff like that, or putting on the wedding ring. This is going to be when 60 frames a second is going to be great for you. And again, 10 frames a second is no slouch. Let's be honest. Again, for my portrait photography work, it's more than enough. For me, 10 frames a second is going to be great. I could use that on a runway and be able to grab a perfect photo while on the runway for fashion photography. Okay, here we go. Now this is awesome. Panasonic has been really going hard on this with the 100 megapixel. Therefore, it stacks your images. Okay, handheld at high res mode. So that's going to be really, really awesome. I've tried high res mode for the first time in the Lumix S5. I was really amazed with how much you could punch in the details, still looking fantastic. Now, obvious caveat is that you're going to need a good tripod. So don't think that the tripod isn't going to come in handy. It will, depending on how depending on the ability of you being able to handhold that camera. But with the technology built into it, you're supposed to be able to do up to a full second worth of hand holding in that high res mode and capture that 100 megapixel image. So for you landscape photographers out there, cityscape, or even realtor photographers, this is going to be a great feature for you in a compact body. All right, now for video, we're getting up to 5.8K open gate 420 video. That's going to be awesome. That's really fantastic. As we know, Panasonic has been giving us open gate. It did it in the Lumix S5 Mark II X. And I believe I can't remember if it's S5 Mark II, but for sure in the GH6. And that open gate opens up so much ability for you to repurpose your video content when you're shooting at open gate, whether it be for vertical videos for TikTok and your reels, or shooting horizontal for long form content like I'm doing now. It's going to give you a lot of flexibility when you're shooting at 5.8K to repurpose it without shooting multiple different types of framing of your video. It also does Cinema 4K 422 10-bit with Vlog. So there you go. I would expect that coming from Panasonic, quite honestly. I wonder if that's 422 at 60 frames a second. I would assume it will be, but I'll bring all that to you later on if and when I can get my hands on it. It does ProRes 422 and 422 HQ recording to a solid state drive. And as many of you know, with the Lumix S5 Mark II and Mark II X, they've added that through a firmware update for you to be able to record directly to a solid state drive. So that's pretty cool. Full size HDMI, as I showed you earlier with the images of the camera body. If since it's using the same chassis frame as the Lumix S5 Mark II and the S5, I'm not surprised that it could do full size HDMI, which is clutch. I don't like using anything less than full HDMI when recording video and using my monitor anyway. So this is good. 390 shots per charge of your battery life. So that's a lot. And quite honestly, you may get a little bit more. This is probably a good average, but if you have 2 or 3 batteries in your pocket, in your bag, you're going to be good to go. I've never had really an issue with this, except for obviously, shooting video more intensive. But for photos, I've never really had an issue. I'll bring 1, maybe 2, and I'm good to go for my average portrait sessions. It does, as I showed you earlier, USB-C power delivery. Okay. That means you could charge this camera on the go through your laptop, through your computer. Heck, I've even recharged my camera battery through my cigarette lighter in my car. So shout out to that. You also have, as we talked about earlier, dual card slot, both being UHS 2. So that's going to be phenomenal. You're going to have very good, reliable speed in terms of recording onto that to your cards. Then we have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, which means you can use the Lumix app with this camera, the same one you've been using for the Lumix GH6, Lumix S5 Mark II, Lumix S5, and Lumix S5 Mark II X. So as well as the S1H as well, and the S1, S1R. So that same app you're going to be able to use for this camera, and that app is really good at transferring data and connectivity. It's very simple, and to be able to use your camera wirelessly as a remote. So shout out to that app. It's always been reliable. Now, at the end of it all, as I said earlier, this is going to be available in November, so just 2 more months, and the price point right now is at $18.99 for the body only. For you Micro Four Thirds shooters out there that like to have lean and compact lenses, you're not going to miss out with this camera. It's going to be a great update. It's the first Micro Four Thirds that's going to be able to give you phase detect autofocus finally, as well as giving you a large 25 megapixel size sensor, which only the GH6 delivered up to this point. Let me know what you think about this camera. Do you think that this price point is fair? What do you think about the features of this camera? Is this kind of camera for you? Let me know down below. According to dpreview.com, the Panasonic Lumix G9 Mark II will be available in early November with a recommended price of $18.99 for just the body only, making it $200 more than the launch price of its predecessor, the G9. Of course, once I'm able to get my hands on this bad boy, I will give you a full real-world review of this camera. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please share your thoughts down below. And yes, if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more, don't forget to press that like, that share, subscribe, and yes, hit that bell icon to get notifications for my upcoming content. I'm Robert Silver, and until next time, keep shooting and stay creative.